I buried Margaret on a Tuesday because the calendar had gotten in the habit of putting hard things there. The funeral home smelled like carnations pretending to be lilies. People who loved me wore their good shoes and looked at me with the faces. We save for men who have been married long enough to confuse silence with luck. My son, Jason, stood at the back with his wife on his arm, and a watch that had learned to be shiny just last year. He asked with his eyes if I would speak. Shook. My head fractioned and touched my breast pocket, where Margaret's last letter sat. It isn't that I didn't have words. It's that Margaret hated speeches and loved soup. So later that night, I heated what she'd frozen and let the steam do the eulogy. The church hall had the good coffee because there are women in that kitchen who let grief borrow their skill. Someone put a plate of ham sandwiches into my hands. I did the dance you do the one with nods, and she was a light and you'll call me, won't you? While trying to ignore the part of my brain that had started inventorying tasks. The minute the hospice nurse said, "I'm so sorry." After the last hug, I drove home to a house that had been measuring itself for a future without humming. The lemon magnet on the pantry door held a list. Margaret had written the week before the hospice bed arrived. Call Rita Bank. Call Alicia the lawyer. Check the gutters you won't. So I wrote it eat. Be kind to Jason even when the line broke there not because she ran out of ink, but because she knew I would. I put my hand on that last word and let the paper say what she would have. I slept in our bed, on my side, because anything else would have upset ghosts. In the morning, I spread her legal pad on the kitchen table and did what she had written. I called Rita first because it was the kind of call Margaret would have wanted me to make sitting down. "Mr. Reed," Rita said, the vault of her voice ready. "I'm so sorry for your loss, thank you," I said. "There are accounts. Margaret set them up. She told me." There was a binder. "Beneficiary designations are clear," she said gently. Todd to you. CD ladder, pod to you. And a policy $300,000 has already initiated a claim. There's also a brokerage joint with survivorship. We have the affidavit ready. I can overnight a packet or you can come in. "Today," I said, because Margaret had circled today on the list and underlined it by 11 a.m. I was in Rita's office, signing the kind of pen-heavy documents that make decent men feel like thieves. The numbers were bigger than my life had ever seen. The IRA rolled into a spousal account. The CD ladder matured into my name. The life policy said what nobody else would, that a person you love can become a dollar amount with a phone call. The brokerage account with the little blue login, she wrote on a taped card under the desk. Because you'll forget, and then you'll blame the computer. Showed a balance that belonged more to Margaret's patience than to any of my smarts, altogether. Just over $600,000. I put the printouts in a folder. I thanked Rita. I did not call Jason. It wasn't calculation. It was respect. Margaret had taught me that money speaks loudest in rooms where people are already shouting. Alicia's office. Smelled like paper and lemon oil and contained every kind of chair you never get to sit in unless you confess a will, she had written. Ours 10 years ago, then revised it after the diagnosis. Then revised it again when the policy had been replaced. There's a kind of love that looks like a woman, insisting that forms be correct. We recorded the affidavit of death of joint Katoon. Tenant this morning, Alicia said. She pushed photos of my own signature back at me like a way of keeping me from floating. House is now titled in your trust. Reed Family Living Trust, as of 2 months ago. You as trustee, Lily as successor, no other co-trustees. Lily is my daughter 28, teaches 8th graders how to read and suffer fools. Jason is 35, builds things that do not exist on his laptop, and calls it startup energy. I want life rights, I said. Life's a state language. If I forget it should remember for me. We did that in March, she said. This house has a hand on your shoulder as long as you stand up. No one sells anything without you initiating. And if I hear your son's voice on the phone trying to simplify paperwork, I will practice new hatreds. I smiled for the first time since Monday. He'll hate you for that. He'll bring me a casserole eventually, she said. We all do our ritual. At home, I filed papers in the cedar box Margaret bought me the year after Jason's first investment opportunity. We had started keeping receipts there after she saw him in a gas station with a man we didn't know and decided. Bookends were not enough of a legacy. The first week without her felt like a series of showings. Of a house I could never afford, everyone came to ooh and ah. Tell me it was spectacular, and then leave me standing in it alone. I walked the rooms because moving is what grief projects as progress. I threw away the cancer Ruth called nesting, and tried not to analyze my willingness to make adorable tapes out of weeping. Jason called on Friday afternoon. He didn't. Say, Dad, he said. You home? I am. We're coming by. 6 okay? The plural is a wait when you're a man who hasn't been vouched for by anyone but his dead wife for a year. Yes. I said he and Brianna arrived with takeout from a place with an ampersand in its name and a casserole dish from his mother-in-law. Brianna hugged me with a sideways spine. Jason put the bag on the counter and started opening my fridge. I did not flinch. These are the habits of children who think kitchens are their old rooms. We wanted to talk, he said finally. After the good chopped salad and 2 bites of a casserole no one could get their mouth around. About plans. It is very beautiful, the specialist said. How men's bodies know when to prepare for impact. My back found the chair rail. I listened. The house is too big for you, he said, exactly like I had written it in my head. When he was an adolescent and needed me to say no to knives, too much. Money-wise, emotionally. Bree and I were thinking we've been looking at places closer to the city. Brianna inserted, the way you insert a wedge under a stubborn board. Jason could be closer to his team. I could get out of my commute. We could list this. And you, Jason said, could come stay with us for a while or buy a condo. Something simple. You could rest. This house is just a lot. I took a breath. The lemon magnet held the list at eye level. Eat, it reminded me, because my hand was about to do something with my glass that would need explaining. I like this house, I said. He put his hands on the island, leaned into the posture he uses when he wants to make an argument morally. Upright by leaning on an object, we already spoke to a realtor, he said. He has a buyer, all cash. You could get top dollar. We could close fast. It's the market. Who owns this house? I asked. What? He blinked. Who owns this house? You and Mom, he said, like a test he had studied for once and forgotten. Half right, I said gently. We put it in a trust months ago. I am the trustee. I let the word trustee be the lug nut it is rather than the thought he uses when he wants me to become his wallet. He smiled, a kind of grin you learn on the internet. Dad, don't complicate this, he said. Let me handle the paperwork. You're grieving. I'll get you a better deal than Alicia the Hammer. You? Called my lawyer the Hammer, I said. She will enjoy that. Oh, I stood. Jason, you are not selling this house? He laughed. It's already under contract, he said, delighted with himself, like a boy who beat a video game with a cheat code. We had to move quick. You can pack your bags. The house is sold. Very odd happened to me in that moment. I became tired and buoyant at once. It felt like seeing an old friend walk into a room and remembering you owe him money. It felt like being corrected in church by a child who can move faster than a sermon. I smiled because I had already packed bags. They weren't mine. Brianna blinked first. You're smiling, she said, confused. You don't get to? Why are you smiling? I walked past her into the hallway. There were 2 suitcases lined up against the baseboard, neatly zipped, name tags sticking out, so they'd snag your eye. I had packed them that afternoon with the calm of a man who writes instructions on the back of a warranty. Where are you going? Jason asked, suspicion loud. It isn't that I want it to be dramatic. It's that. Margaret had circled be kind to Jason, even when under the lemon magnet. And I needed props. Not me, I said, touching the bags. You, Brianna, laughed, the brittle laugh of a plate you dropped, and hoped nobody saw. Dad, she said she calls me that when she wants credit. That is, you listed my house without telling me, I said. You invited a stranger. To put a $sign on rooms your mother made and ask me to stand in the yard while they measured the kitchen like a banker. You used my name on a contract you can't see. Your bags are here because tonight you're going back to your apartment. In Montview or Montelaire or wherever you both decided, belongs to you now. I'll send your mail to the P.O. box you have been using to pretend you pay your own bills. Jason's mouth worked like a problem set, trying to remember how variables behave. You can't, he started. I can, I said. And also, I did. In the morning, Alicia recorded the affidavit of death of joint tenant and the trust's title with the county. By afternoon, she had already fielded a call from a realtor named Justin who used the word seniors in a sentence that insulted a census. Alicia told him that in our county, can't sell what you don't own, and you definitely can't sell something a trust owns. Unless the trustee knows your first and last name and has a good reason to let you be in the room, why would you do this to me? Jason asked. And it is a strange burden to have a child make correcting a verb feel like resolution. To you, he meant like I used to. You did this to yourself, I said. You do not get to decide a home people died in, his inventory. He flinched. The first time since the funeral that a sentence landed through his blazer, Brianna's. Faced at a math it didn't enjoy. We wanted, she started. You wanted to stand in a kitchen without grief in it, I said. I don't get to do that yet. Maybe never. Dad. Jason tried again. I haven't told you everything, I said. I won't tonight. But you need to know this. Your mother left money. She left it in accounts that have my name on them and a list of rules taped to the pantry door. She left me a house in a way you can't trip with your mouth. She left me an attorney who likes me enough to let you hate her. She left me a banker who likes taps. She left me a pen and a yellow pad and the word no with the word and next to it instead of but. You got to assume I had nothing because I behaved like a man whose wife just died. It's your mistake. You don't get to exploit it. He threw up his hands in a way that belongs at a frat house. I was trying to help, he said, to simplify. To simplify your life, I said. We're not the same man, Jason. We do not even like the same verbs. Where will we go? Brianna asked. Not small, not kind, but closer to the room where real things happen than she had been in years. To your apartment, I said. The one you said was too small when Margaret was sick. The one you never gave up because you thought you'd need a bolt hole if your story didn't stick. Or I took a breath like a man about to pull a tooth he should have yanked in 2003. Or you can stay if you say please and we write rules, but you are not living here as landlords. You are tolerated at my pleasure, which is a poor word for it, he stared. He is not good at please. We'll talk, he said finally, ears red, tomorrow. In Alicia's office. She would prefer to have you in a professional setting anyway, I said. When they left, I carried the suitcases to the trunk of their car and closed it for them, not because I am kind, but because I am tired. Inside, I went to the kitchen. The lemon magnet held Margaret's page. I pulled a fresh sheet of yellow paper. I wrote what comes next because that's what comforts me. House, money, boundaries, under house, I wrote. Ricky Friday Morales affidavit recorded done. Remove Jason from any utility. Alicia will yell if needed. Read the binder again and cry after the gutters under money. Don't tell him amounts. Pay Alicia. Hey Rita. Fix the roof and the sink faucet. Buy lilies for Margaret on Thursdays until you forget which day. And then it's okay to switch to Tuesdays under. Boundaries. No more limbo time dinner invitations unless they include please and a schedule. If he says it's, just hang up. If he says you owe me, tell him to call his therapist. If he shows up with a realtor, call Alicia and make Tetha House approved. The refrigerator hummed. The magnet stuck, yet the page stayed. We saw Alicia the next morning. Because decent fighters like daylight, she wore a navy suit that had one wars and a pair of flats that mean business. All right, she said. Say it all here, so the walls take some of it. Jason tried first. He does that. Dad is being stubborn, he said. He won't let us help him. We found a buyer and a great agent, and you signed a listing agreement on behalf of a trust you aren't a trustee of, Alicia said, not looking at him. Flipping through papers and finding a copy of the contract as if fate had put it under her hand because it would have made a better scene, he colored. Justin said Justin will not be saying anything to anyone for a week, she said. Because if he does, I will file a complaint with the Department of State that will make him wish he had learned how to spell fiduciary before he printed his cards. Brianna leaned forward. "Mrs. Taylor," she said, choosing the wrong line of defense and getting it anyway. "We're just trying to plan. We can't have him rattling around in that house alone. The trust says he can rattle as long as he feels like it," Alicia said. "He can rattle with marbles at 4 in the morning if his grief tells him that's prayer. You can visit if invited. You can drop soup if your hands can cook. You cannot list his house's inventory." Alicia slid a piece of paper across the table. "Here are the parameters," she said. "They are simple, and they will live under a magnet. Jason, you and Brianna may stay for 2 weeks on notice while you figure out where you mean to live. If you intend to stay longer, you will pay a modest rent. Market is $3,400. You'll pay $900 and a schedule with dishes on it. You'll carry insurance on your belongings. You will not bring a realtor into this house while the trustee is alive. You will not move your father's furniture. You will not call the trust complicated, like the word itself is an indictment." Jason opened his mouth, closed it, looked at me like I had thrown 2 years' worth of fatherhood into a shredder. "Your mother asked me for this," Alicia said, turning her head just enough for her voice to go soft and blunt at once. "She knew your grief would try to be loud with obligations." He said nothing. He and Brianna signed. We scheduled a move out that looked more like a grace period than an eviction. On the way out, Alicia touched my elbow. "He's not a villain," she said. "He's a man who learned money the way you taught him to as a boy, by watching your hands. He watched Margaret's hands and saw savings. He watched yours and saw yous. He's confused. He thinks feelings should close fast. They don't. Make him eat casserole in silence." That night, Margaret was not humming. The pen worked. We had soup. I shouldn't have been surprised at what I found in the cedar box a day later when I went to file the trust receipt and found something tucked under Margaret's letter. She had left one more page. "Johnny Fajason tries to sell the house. He will do this. Put it in the trust. You did. Call Alicia. You did. Pack their bags so you are not tempted to worry about where they will sleep. They are grown. Our job is over, but our table is not closed. If it hurts to say no, go to the pantry door. Tape this there. Put your hand on it. Stand still. Remember, I love you. Say no again. We have more than we need. We have enough. To be kind. Be kind after boundaries, not before." I put that letter under the lemon magnet next to my own. The pantry door looked like someone had installed a law library. Jason walked into the kitchen that evening with Brianna behind him like a chapel with legs. He stopped at the door when he saw the papers. He tried to read. The words bent in the presence of grief. "I went through Mom's recipe box," he said, not looking at me, looking at the place where she had written, in a hand known to every cupboard, "Lasagna good enough for Joy's family." He held out a card. "Can we make this?" He almost said "we" and then corrected himself because we had not used "we" without lying in a while. "Can I make this for you?" I said. He boiled water wrong. He cut onions like crime. He burned the first batch of garlic. He and Brianna laughed in that awful way you do when you still remember the last laugh you had with a woman who taught you what oil does at different heats. He made something edible. He sat down. "Dad," he said, "I'm sorry, not sorry. For wanting you near me? I'm not sorry I want to move things around to make my life easier. I'm sorry I didn't ask. That's the part that made it mine when it should have been ours. I love you," I said, and the room did not hold it up like a trophy. It let it sit on the table and stain the placemat. That is where love belongs. No. Outside, the porch light clicked on. It's the way it used to when Margaret would get up to go check whether we'd let the raccoons get into the trash again. I checked anyway. The raccoons had learned the lesson. It was time to teach mine. Asterisk. Justin called first. He didn't know Alicia had already called him. He didn't know Alicia had already drafted the complaint. He only knew there was a motivated buyer and a flexible seller and the rush that comes from thinking gravity likes you. Mr. Reed, with the false sunshine. Of a man whose business card does not list a last name, just wanted to touch base about, you listed a trust asset without contacting the trustee, I said. You will withdraw the listing. You will apologize. You'll write to your buyer explaining that you did not have authority and that the listing is void. He tried the patter. It's a very strong offer, he said. All cash. They have a mortgage broker who could all cash buyers don't have mortgage brokers, I said gently. You just wanted another noun in your sentence. He paused, Mr. Reed. He tried a different key. I have a fiduciary duty, you do, Alicia said, shocking him speechless as she joined the call from a number he had not stored. Because men like him do not store women like her. Your duty is to your client. My client is not your client. The trust is not your client. You will do the following in this order. Withdraw the MLS listing. Email me a copy, text the buyer that the listing was unauthorized, and draft a letter to your broker explaining why the Department of State will be glad to hear from me if this reappears. He made a sound that landed somewhere between O and a curse. Miss Taylor, he said, discovering formal address. If you'll let me know, she said. Kind the way a clean cut is kind, right? Send today. It should have ended there. Anik is not thorough. Then the buyer rang the bell at noon. Was 40, maybe 45 lean jacket, too small in that way men telegraph fitness without gym time. His lawyer was with him. A woman in flats with a file and a face that said she had eaten enough men like Justin to prefer salad. Mr. Reed, he asked, hand half out. I'm Michael Grant. I sent a letter of intent through your agent. I don't have an agent, I said. You sent a letter through a man who has a listing to withdraw. He colored. I'm sorry, he said. I thought he told us. He stopped, looked down, then up. May I talk to you for 5 minutes on your porch? No nonsense. He meant it. I could see the shape of the apology being prepared. Yes, I said, stepping onto the porch, letting the front door rest against my hip. You have 5 minutes. This house has had enough nonsense this week. My wife and I, he said. Measured, we're looking for a ground floor place. Her dad is moving in. He's had trouble with stairs. This neighborhood would have been good. I know grief smells the same in every zip code, but this one seems to handle it with more casseroles. He glanced at the hydrangea bush. Margaret had ferried from our old place in '99. It looked like a pretty woman whose makeup had fallen off. He looked like a man who had once dug a hole for a thing he did not understand and hoped it was the right one. Your son, he said, still measured, sounded like he had authority. That is my failure. I did not ask the right questions. My lawyer asked me why I was talking to a child. A lawyer she had not introduced herself lifted a hand without looking up from the file. Not child, she said, but not the trustee. He nodded. Not the trustee. I'm sorry I knocked. I will email your lawyer a letter for her file, the one where she writes to a state agency in a tone that terrifies men like me. And he hesitated, took the last piece of a sentence off helper verbs. Your roof. It needs work. I can see that from here. If you want a guy who will tell you the truth about rafters, I know one who will not talk to you like a mailman. Who owes him something? I have a guy, I said. Morales. He does locks. He knows a roof good, he said. Use him. All right, I'll sign. And he paused. Dangerous and sweet. I'm sorry for grieving men with earrings like me. We are awful at kitchens. Some of you make good casseroles, I said. He smiled. I make a mean mac and cheese, he said. My wife will tell you it's penance. I call it dinner. He left me his card and an apology letter in my inbox by 3. Alicia forwarded me the complaint she had softened for the Department of State. He will never use motivated seller in a sentence again. She wrote, at 4 o'clock, the China tried to leave. It wasn't trying to be dramatic. It was trying to be a parting gift. Brianna had come while I was in the yard, and I walked into the foyer to find her halfway up the stairs, carefully carrying one of Margaret's laundry baskets lined with a towel, plates nestled like eggs. What are you doing? I asked, and said it soft enough that the banister didn't misunderstand me. She froze. Baking for a fundraiser, she said. Emma's school. The lie was tired, I thought. I thought you wouldn't mind. They were Margaret's. Mother's plates. Cornflour blew around the rim in a pattern that matched the mug that sits in my rack like a sentinel. We use them for holidays and for Tuesday, I mind. I mind more than I can tell the clerk at the bond office. Put them down. A new voice said from the stairs, calm like a closing argument. Alicia sat on the step halfway, folder on her knees. Shoes off, who knows why, but it startled me into smiling. She belongs barefoot less than any woman I know. She looks like gravity in court. She looked like family law on my runner. You're trespassing, she said to Brianna. Pleasant. If you wanted to borrow china for a fundraiser, you could have asked the person at this address who picks up my retainers. Would you like to ask him now? Brianna set the basket down. The little clink the plates made when they touched each. Other will haunt me, I thought, she started. To make room for your new flatware, Alicia finished, without heat. You thought a lot of things this week. Let the rest of us do some of the thinking now. Brianna looked at me. She is not my daughter. She has not had to ask for me this week. She did anyway. Please, she said. It was real. It nearly broke me into letting her have 3 saucers as a prize for good pronunciation. For the school, said, because I will always like children more than adults. 1 plate's worth of cookies. On a tray, you can bring the cookies. Back here, and we'll wrap them. You may borrow the tray. May not borrow the past. She nodded, miserable and relieved. Alicia stood, and in what I will remember for the rest of my life, picked up the laundry basket and carried it back downstairs. I have never loved another attorney the way I loved that scene. At 9:03 the next morning, Rita called. At the vault. Voice. The delighted one she uses when other people's tragedies take a day off. Mr. Reed, she said, there's a wire in. Which account would you like it in? From I asked, even though I knew. I like theater when it starves grief. Life company, she said. Policy proceeds. 300,000. The checking will have a heart attack, I said. Put it in the money market first, and we'll come in and make a map. Went to the cedar box for the trust document and found something Margaret had left in the back under a peplet. It was put $100,000 into a donor-advised fund at the community foundation. Call it the Cornflower Fund. No plaque, no dinner. Just one small decent thing a month until you die. Ask Lily to sit with you once a quarter and decide where. Let her teach you about the 7th graders and their stubborn little brains. Give $50,000 to the church quietly and tell them to put it in the line item for chairs and coffee. Nothing with my name on it. It will make me happy if I hear the Backhall got new rubber mats because of a check my handwriting earned. I set $50,000 in a custodial account for each grandchild we do not have yet or have. Not to be used for cars. Not to be used for Instagram. For books and skill. Do not tell Jason an amount when he asks. Tell him you love him. If he asks too many times, send him Alicia's number and go for a walk. Call me names under your breath. Tape this under the lemon magnet when you are laughing again. Plant peas. Underneath a list she'd already typed, 3 organizations with addresses I know Berry friends. Pantry, clinic. I cried into the page so hard I had to blow it dry with a hairdryer like a woman rescuing wet flowers. Cornflower, said. To the room nodded. Lemon magnets are good listeners. At Rita's, we moved money like it was not a betrayal. Operating, she said. 2 years, I said. Property taxes. Insurance. The Tuesday Meatloaf Fund. Fix the roof, locks, gutters. And the rest. She asked because she knows I'm a man who wants instructions to feel like permission. DAF. I said Community Foundation, Cornflower. What do you know? She said, grinning. Your wife used to serve on the grant review. I loved her because she says no nicely. She still does, I said. We opened the DAF with paperwork that made me feel less like rich and more like responsible. We put $100,000 in to start. Rita wrote the memo line by hand because she's sentimental. Cornflower Fund 1 small. Decent thing a month. The foundation director came out to shake my hand because that is how the middle of America works. He did not ask me for a breakfast. He asked me what my favorite library smells like. Old paper and childhood, I said. He laughed. We have a project for you. I did not tell Jason about any of it. I taped Cornflower under the magnet, and when he came to ask about plans, I showed him the lasagna recipe again. In the next days, Morales' guy got up on the roof, took photos like he loved me, circled the soft spots, quoted a number I didn't resent, and scheduled a crew. Your house gets to be a house, he said. Lucky you. Lily came over with a binder. 7th graders need noses for books, she said. Cornflower can buy book noses. We laughed until we couldn't. Then we wrote 3 small checks. $1,200 for the library's sensory reading tools, $750 for mats for the church kitchen, $2,500 for the clinic to buy a rolling chair. That doesn't make the nurse swear when she tries to fit it back into the exam room. One small decent thing a month got cocky for the first month. We were allowed. Alicia forwarded me an email from a Department of State investigator whose subject line read, "File received and open your realtor friend. Justin will not be using exclamation points professionally for a while," she wrote. Brianna brought the cookies back on the tray. Precisely 14 missing, 1 broken, half placed back on the plate like a confession. The fundraiser. People said the plate is pretty, she said. I told them it is not for sale. I nodded at her with the solemnity a man owes a daughter-in-law who has finally learned how to speak kitchen. Jason stopped opening my fridge without asking. He stood in the doorway and said please, and then thank you, and then sorry. And then please again, like a rosary. It will take time. He asked if he could keep a toolbox in the garage. Said yes, if you label it and put it back where you found it. He did. Rita called to say, Mr. Reed, the IRA rollover is in. I told her, name the money market roof in peas. She laughed so loud I could hear paperwork blush. We ate it. We put plates in the sink. We slept like people who had survived 2 weeks without making the mistake of selling the building that holds their beds. There will be more knocks. There will be more money. There'll be more plans, Margaret wrote, in a hand that smells like cornflowers and glue. There will be Jason's job application. I will help him edit without pretending it restores anything yet. There will be Lily's. 7th graders getting noses for books. There will be 1 small decent thing a month until I die. Hopefully until I don't remember why it mattered. Next month, chairs at the church. The month after, library beanbags that do not smell like the 1970s. The month after that, a set of rails in the park so men my age can pretend the world cares. How we take steps. Jason will move out on day 13 without fuss. He will ask for a casserole recipe, and then call Brianna for help, and then call me to ask if he can borrow the good pan. I will say yes because yes lives after no. And that is how houses learn to stop shaking. He will not mention investments. He will learn that help in this family runs through Alicia and Rita. He will stop hating Alicia and start bringing her donuts. 1 at a time, because she will never eat more than that. And one night, when the roof crew parks out front and the street gets loud, a car will crawl by too slowly. A man with the wrong kind of jacket for July will roll down his window to look at my house. He'll have a printout of a listing that never was. He will see me on the porch. He'll look at the bags in my hallway through the open door and wonder whose clothes they were supposed to hold. I will wave. He will go. The bags will stay empty, just long enough to remind me I am not going anywhere until I decide to. Asterisk, I wrote the first cornflower check at the kitchen table because Margaret would have wanted the paper to know where it was headed before the money did. Friends of the library, on the payee line. $1,200. Memo. Book noses, overlays, headphones, wobble seat. I put the pen down like a stamp. Lily watched from the other side of the table with the kind of joy teachers save for. When the world does something sensible. You sure you don't? Want a plaque? She teased, knowing the answer. Only if it fits on the bottom of a chair, I said. Even then, scratch it with a paperclip. We drove the check over because some things deserve a handoff. The director, Helen, all elbows and purpose took it, like a loan she couldn't wait to repay. It'll stretch this like dough, she said. Colored overlays, noise-canceling headphone sets, 2 wobble stools for kids with ants in there, legs and a set of decodable readers that won't make Jamal feel like we set him on fire. Jamal? I asked. Reads like a genius when the room is quiet, and someone forgives him for fidgeting, she said. Hates fiction that condescends. Loves anything with an engine. Bring him to Morales's on a Saturday, I said. He can see a roof come apart and go back together. Done. she said, as if I had just told her the city would keep the lights on for free. Lily let me into her classroom on a Thursday afternoon. The way 8th grade teachers smuggle civics into literature. 28 desks, 4 lamps. Someone donated one paper chain that had survived 3 years of hands and still pretended it was charming. On the back table sat our shopping a riot of transparent color sheets. Headphone headbands. Yes, I said. Bring a screwdriver. He hung the frame. He stood back. He hung it again because he had hung it 1 degree off, and Alicia would have come over at midnight to fix it with a sigh. He didn't mention the trust, didn't mention money. He looked at his mother's face and said, I messed this up. To the exact right thing. The next morning, the mail brought a letter with a handwriting I didn't recognize, and a return address 3 blocks from where the buyer had shaken my hand. Mr. Reed, we have not met. My husband is, and regrettably has been, a man in the club of men who knock on doors with offers shaped like rescue. I write to apologize for showing up at your house and notices. I also write to ask a favor. My father fell yesterday. 2 steps, no rail, no broken hips, thank God. Just a bruised pride and a hairline crack in the story I tell myself about being a daughter. Who has done enough? You mention a Morales on your porch, a man who knows roofs and, by the logic of men who do roofs correctly, probably knows about rails. Do you have a number? If the Cornflower Fund you hinted at the library, has a category for preventing disasters at 2 stairs, we would take help. If it does not, we will pay. Either way, would you share a name? I am sorry again. For grief that thinks it knows where to park, Elise grant this city is small in the ways that matter. The buyers whose money had tried to bear their decent motive were not villains either. They were children with instruments who had hired a bad band leader. The fact that her father fell argued for my role, rails and checks, not speeches. I wrote her back in a hand that has gotten more exercise these past months than in all previous years. Combined Elise Morales Construction, 555-0199, ask for. Tomas, tell him it's a rail for a father who doesn't like that sentence. He'll send Hector with a level and 1 joke. Cornflower will cover materials, invoice to the community foundation, not your refrigerator. When the rail is up, ask your father to write me a note that says whether he likes the height. Doesn't have to say thank you. He can say Saturday. No apology owed for knocks that sound like people looking for hardware. John Hector showed up the next day with a post, a rail, a box of screws that smell like Home Depot in progress. He installed the rail in 40 minutes and spent another 40 telling Elise's father about the difference between a lag bolt and a carriage bolt, while the man tested grip with a suspicion that eventually warmed into approval. He gave Elise his card and told her, call me when the other side of the stairs decides to quit being brave. She sent me a photo that night, her father's hand on the rail, her face in the mirror behind him, relief carved around her jaw. Like a sculpture finally finished, hand a note with 1 sentence. Saturday pancakes were better today. We sent Cornflower's second check to the clinic for gate belts. To the pantry for shelf-stable milk that does not curdle grammar. To the church for 1 more anti-fatigue mat in the back hall. I dropped the checks off like bread in. A neighborhood where you know the dogs and the streetlights with bad bulbs. Margaret's list at the door grew a 2nd page. Cornflower library overlays. Headphones, stools done, clinic gate belts ordered, pantry shelf milk pallet church mat arrived. Rail for Mr. Grant invoiced 2 CF. Rita called midweek with her own list. Money market looks like a nice mattress, she said. Community fund outflow is tidy. The IRA is behaving like an adult. Do you want me to set a monthly drip into operating so you stop refusing to buy fresh raspberries in? February out of a Protestant reflex? Yes, I said. And no raspberries. Peas then, she said. Peas, I said. And wrote plant peas under cornflower in March. Because grammar is a flexible friend in my kitchen. Justin Dash the realtor. A letter of apology too. Alicia that read like a driver's ed manual the 2nd week after a crash. The Department of State sent a letter to Justin's broker that read like scripture. Alicia forwarded both to me with this in the subject line, penance accepted. No acronyms for 6 months. Jason surprised me on the 4th Wednesday, the one where we allow ourselves meatloaf because grief eats when ritual gets bored. He arrived early, brought a bag of onions that had not been cut, which means he meant to be there. He pulled out a chair and stood behind it. "Dad," he said, "please can I look at the binder?" He meant the cedar box. He meant the trust. And the bank login card and the insurance in a folder Margaret labeled "in event of me being right," and the letter she wrote called "cornflower." He meant, "Can you show me where love becomes paperwork?" "Yes," I said. "On 3 conditions." He nodded. "He has learned to do that when he is asking for a door." "1," I said, "you do not memorize numbers. You do not carry amounts in your mouth like resume fodder." "Okay," he said. 2, I said, "you ask Alicia your questions before you ask me. She will tell you which ones are about the trust and which ones are about your grief." He made a face he had learned from his mother when she evaluates a cake. "Okay," he said again. 3, I said, "you help nail the new cornflower birdhouse your sister brought over to the maple tree while we talk? Keep your hands doing something useful while you learn how to ask nicely?" He smiled, "Less internet, more boy." "Okay," he said, and this one was the right size. We opened the box. We took out the paper like it was a living thing. We put our hands on Margaret's list and the trust in a new page I had added titled Roof and Peas. We talked through accounts like weather. We read cornflower again together. The way you read an instruction manual 4 times because you want a thing to last. He did not ask for numbers. He did not perform his son being good, understood by his father being simple. He asked what a DAF was. He asked why we put it in the foundation. He asked what our next one small decent thing would be. He asked if he could pick one someday for a Mr. Grant who wasn't his buyer. "Yes," I said. "After you pick a tray at the next fundraiser without asking for a plate." He laughed. It sounded less brittle. He swung a hammer, only smashed 1 finger, and didn't swear until he'd put the hammer down. This is growth. When the roofers finished, the house felt like it had stood up straighter to have its picture taken. I walked the rooms like a man showing the place to a realtor who would not get quite this tour. Pantry ceiling dry, attic less angry. Rafters content, ridge vent breathing, tin horseshoe steadfast. I stood under Margaret's cornflower mug and the dish rack and said out loud for the first time since the funeral, we did something right. The lemon magnet held to lists, the one that began Call Rita and the one that began Cornflower. The pantry door had become our law. The kitchen had become our court. The house had become our compromise. Mine to live in, ours to steward, theirs to learn decency inside. There will be letters. There will be rails. There will be 7th graders who need a wobble seat and a man who needs to be told where to put his hand to stand. There will be the buyer's wife sending me a photo of her father watching a ball game with his foot elevated, a note that says, "He didn't fall today." There will be a new knock on my door from a neighbor who has Googled Cornflower Fund and found nothing but my kitchen. We will open the door or not, depending on what the letter on our pantry tells us to do that week. Next month's one small decent thing is on my list already. The clerk at the community center called Lily. "We need a microphone that doesn't hate us," she said. "Cornflower will buy it." Jason, the community center microphone had been dying dramatically for years. It squealed like a raccoon cut out during bingo, and earned its keep mostly by teaching teenagers how to project. Cornflower could buy us a mic that doesn't hate us. Helen, the library director, moonlighting as the community association's unofficial organizer, had said, "One with a stand that doesn't pretend it can hold itself up with faith." So we did. I wrote the second Cornflower checks, $647.18, according to a website that looked reputable and a sales guy who said, "Yes, sir," without trying to upsell me a fog machine. Memo. Mic plus stand plus cable neighbor's night. Taped a copy under. The magnet next to Margaret's list. The pantry door was starting to look like a bulletin board in a classroom that had stopped pretending. Minimalism was a virtue. Jason came over to install it. It wasn't in his skill set on paper. On paper, his skill set included presentation decks and growth hacking. But he wanted to try, and I wanted a night where he came into a room to make something work he'd never be able to sell. "Please," he said in the doorway. "And if I die tomorrow, that will still be in the top 10 uses of the word I've heard in this house. Do the mic with you? And bring a drill I promise I will put back." "Yes," I said. "Take your shoes off." We walked into the community hall at 3 in the afternoon because I've learned that's when rooms are most forgiving. The stage, A platform on cinder blocks that someone's uncle assembled in 1986 with hope and drywall screws. This looked like it needed a little love. We took turns with the drill while Lily sat with a lesson plan and a stapler at the table that has always smelled like old Sharpie. Cable runs along the wall, Jason said. Aim the mic away from the speakers. Test. Lower. Lower again. His mouth got into it. His shoulders forgot to ask me for permission. The whole thing took 15 minutes, and then we fussed with it for 40, like men who needed to stay in a room that didn't ask us to remember anything. Harder than a socket size. Neighbor's night at 7 wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. Mr. Williams from down the block with the porch swing came to talk about the bus schedule. Helen made an announcement about the library's homework elbow hour for kids who can't stand poems but can stand adults, who know where the stapler is. The high school band director announced a fundraiser and then played 3 notes, 'cause the mic worked, and he needed to be sure for half a minute that the world could carry his sound. Testing, he said. Testing, testing. No squeal. Jason whispered to me, smiling. Cornflower, I whispered back. Day 13 arrived on a Sunday. The suitcases that had been patient like obedient dogs finally got their walk. Jason and Brianna moved 2 blocks away to a place they could afford again. The apartment wasn't large, but it had light. And Brianna looked relieved in a way that almost made me forgive every sentence she'd inhaled from her mother about kitchens and control. She carried a box labeled books and wedding things and didn't inventory my house with her eyes while she stood on the porch. This felt like repentance in a language I understood. You'll come for Wednesday, I said. Please, Brianna said, catching herself, then repeating it for the practice of it. Please, and thank you. You're welcome, I said. Alicia texted from 2 houses down, where she had somehow materialized to watch the move like a neighborhood. Watch with a minor in sarcasm, no exclamation points on the lease. She put a winky face, which is how I know she's become family. Monday brought a handwritten envelope with a return address, I recognized from the buyer's card. Elise, Mr. Reed. The rail is perfect. My father put his hand on it and made a sound. I haven't heard since he taught me to ride a bike, the one where a man thanks his body for letting him be as stubborn as his heart wants him to be. He asked me to ask you if we could buy you pancakes. He would be terribly offended if you said no, but he promised not to lecture you about politics if you promised not to lecture him about baseball also, your roofer said. The vent on our roof was lying to us. We hired him. He did his hands like dight. A priest. Our house can breathe now. No invoice to Cornflower. We can afford that. Save your fund for the library chairs and the church mats and whatever Mrs. Helen's eyebrows want next. Thank you, and I'm sorry again. Nobody teaches you how to be decent this late. You're teaching us. Elise and Peter Sy stapled a picture of the rail to this letter, like it's 2001. Frame it for the magnet if you like, he wrote on the back. Saturday. I taped the picture under the lemon magnet, his hand on. The rail looked like a promise I could staple to an entire neighborhood. On Wednesday, we ate in my kitchen with fewer people and more presents. Jason came early and chopped onions without maiming. He looked at Margaret's cornflower mug in the dish rack the way a man looks at a shoreline he stopped trying to sell and started trying to return to Dad. He said he's practicing the word more often now, sometimes without an agenda. I got an email from Justin. Is he out of adjectives? I asked. He sent an apology to Alicia, which I didn't understand, and then one to me, which I did, he said. He said he told the Department of State he'd be taking a class on fiduciary obligations. He asked if I wanted to get coffee and talk about future opportunities. What did you say? I asked, my hands finding the edge of the table. The way they do when my mouth is about to be tested. I sent him Alicia's number, he said, and laughed in a way that felt new. And then I blocked him. Good, I said. Dad, he said again, wading into the kind of sentence I used to fill with sarcasm. Please. Can I help pick the next thing for Cornflower? Not the money. The thing. Yes, I said, because I've been waiting to hear that exact ask from him since he was 7 and wanted to hand crayons to the kid. Never had any. Helen answered her phone on the second ring. What do you need, and how fast? Shit said. Because she knows me, and because Lily had texted her 2 minutes earlier. Chairs, I said? Not the kind of mom makes, the kind of plastic budget makes. She laughed. We need 4, she said. For our family reading corner, the ones that make adults sit at kid height without rage. The cheap ones I can get now will last until mid-September. The good ones will last through a mayoral race. Good, I said. Pick a color. Cornflower, she said without shame. I don't care if the room looks like a diner. Place the order together on my laptop. Jason clicked submit because grief moves to the back row when sons use verbs in kitchens. Rita called on Thursday, with a voice that makes my wallet relax. 2 things, she said. 1, the IRA rollover tax withholding needs a form. Come sign. 2, the Community Foundation sent a note. Cornflowers first grants. Library overlays and stools. Clinic gate belts, pantry shelf milk, community. Center mic, they want to feature you in the newsletter with a blurb. No names, I said. They already wrote one without your name, she said. Says a donor asked to fund dignity on a schedule. I'll allow it, said. Also, she added, because she has a sense of humor like stainless. Steel useful, and it laughs when appropriate. Are you planting peas? Sunday, I said. Lily will judge me. I caught Mr. Grant, his name is Peter, but I am from a world where you call a father by his last name when you like him. On his porch on Friday when I walked past his house on the way to the post office, the rail looked like a sentence. The way he leaned on it looked like punctuation. You can tell Morales this is the right height, he said. No wobble. He shook it, even though it did not need shaking to prove something to himself. I told him a man named Peter would say that, he said. He smiled, because he is smart and says less than he could. Pancakes tomorrow? He asked. Elise is making too many. She invited 3 people. I told her not to show off. I'm a fan of not showing off, I said. 10a.m. at 11, he said. Sleep like a cat now. Saturday at 11. I sat at Elise's table and ate pancakes that weren't better than my late wife's, because that's not how widowers talk. Well, but they were very good, and they were enough. Peter argued about baseball in that kind way. You argue when you know the other person knows you're wrong and loves you anyway. Elise asked me to tell her about Margaret without making it a speech. We didn't talk about the realtor. We didn't say trust. We talked about rails and peas. Peas, Elise asked. Mid-pour? March, I said. I promised Margaret I'd plant them. She wrote it on a list and threatened me. Plant peas is the only commandment she put on my pantry door that involves dirt. On Sunday, I turned the soil in the small rectangle of yard by the maple that has seen more intention than tomatoes. The ground was cold and willing. Lily came to supervise with a library book on square-foot gardening and a tone like a traffic cop. Jason came with a level because he can't help himself and because he still wants to be useful in rooms he used to try to own. We put the peas in, pressed them down with fingers instead of tools, ran twine, even though the stakes were short. We did what you do when you plant anything that won't give you fruit for a while. Pretended we weren't pre-grieving. Jason stood and dusted, his hands off on his jeans the way I used to pretend to hate when he was 9. It isn't much. He said, and my heart had the good sense to stay quiet on the criticism and hear the compliment. It's enough. Lily said, first, because she has inherited both Margaret's bossiness and my economy. I fixed the twine, a tiny, useless human gesture that really only exists to give fathers something to do when they want to say, I love you, with their fingers by afternoon. There was another letter in the mailbox with a return address from the Department of State, Division of Licensing. Dear Ms. Taylor, your right to confirm receipt and disposition of your complaint Justin Oliver, license no. RE 447982. After review. The department has issued a reprimand to Mr. Oliver and ordered remedial education and duty